Hello everybody. This video is designed to be watched in between our two online meetings as part of our blended intensive program. I'm going to be asking you lots of questions in these two videos. The idea is that you take notes of your answers to these questions, and I'll be repeating the questions when we're all together. I want to be with you reflecting on comparative social work. So the format of this video, thinking about comparing, lots of questions to get you thinking. Some I'll ask and answer myself directly in the video. Others I'll leave for our discussion on your next online meeting with me. In other words, I'll be asking these questions again in that session to hear your ideas. And I really encourage you guys to take notes, get your thoughts down on paper so that we can discuss them all next time we see each other. It may be fun to link in with your mixed country group members beforehand to discuss those questions together. That may be a fun thing to do. It's lovely to exchange ideas with people from different nationalities. So our first question to think about together, comparative social work. Is it easy? It isn't. It really isn't. It's not easy for various reasons. I find it fun. I love doing it. And when we're going to be in Germany together, as an international group, we're going to find ourselves doing it. We won't be able to help ourselves. Okay. On the other hand, it's worth noting it's not an easy thing to do. There's dangers when you do it, and there's also difficulties when you do it. And this is my first question. Let's hold on to some of these dangers. Let's hold on to some of these difficulties. Why can it be problematic sometimes to do comparative social work? List as many as you can, make notes, hold on to your answers here, because this is a question I am going to repeat when I next see you guys in our upcoming online session. So hold on to what you write down here. Our second question, look at this for a slide title, social work, a global profession. Is it? Can we say that? Why? Why might we argue that social work is a global profession today? What kind of arguments could we use to underline that claim? Think about that, pause here, scratch your head, try to come up with a few reasons. I can think of at least 5 or 6 spontaneously. Here they are, here's my reasons. Firstly, our methods. Although social work methods vary from place to place, some of Germany's, for example, are not the same as in the Anglo-Saxon countries. Nonetheless, there is a core set of common social work methods. For example, social casework with individual families or individuals. That's something which really is done in so many places. So we have core methods which cross national boundaries. We also have theories that cross national boundaries. Think of North American strengths-based social work. You know, similar approaches exist in Europe as well. So, you know, we read about and we pick up other people's theories and we develop them further. So we have, to some extent, already a core of theories which have crossed national boundaries. What about ethics? What about the values of social work? Despite the differences of social work from place to place, our ethical principles are often the same. You know, wherever I am in the world, whichever continent I'm on, an orientation on social justice may be a key part of my work. So think about things like human rights, you know, quite universal, not limited to one particular nation. What about the mandate? What things are social workers expected to deal with? Now, our tasks vary from place to place, you know, depending on the needs of a country, depending on the social problems in a country. But there are common concerns that social workers have to address. Child welfare, preventing child abuse would be an example there. So we've got some fairly common expectations in terms of what we're expected to do. What about globalization? Our society is globalized. Our social problems today are often global social problems. So we can't really see unemployment as being a national concern. It's an international concern. It's caused by changes to the global economy. And this is true of so many of our problems today. Social problems cross borders. Finally, we are global. Many of us are practicing social work in a country which is different to the country in which we were born. Many of us have international experience. And also our clients are mobile. Our societies are multicultural societies of migration. So in that sense, the world is changing and the world is getting smaller. So I think there's a powerful argument to see social work as a global profession. And look at this, we have a global definition of social work. If you're a social work student, I'm guessing you already know this. If you're not a social work student, it's a lovely introduction into what social work is. Have a look at this, we can read it together. Social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. Principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for diversity are central to social work. Underpinned by theories of social work, social sciences, humanities, and indigenous knowledge, social work engages people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being. The above definition may be amplified at national and/or regional levels. And if you're not a social work student, I really can urge you to look at that and to actually look at it carefully. It's lovely to look at each word in turn and kind of scratch your head and think, what does that term mean exactly? What is social change? What is social development? What is social cohesion? You know, this really is the conceptual terminology of social work. This is really trying to pin down what we do and what orientates us. It's a global definition. It's designed to work everywhere. So it's designed to be relevant to a practitioner in South Africa, just as much as a practitioner in the Philippines, just as much as a practitioner in Britain or the States. So this is an interesting idea. But if you look at the last sentence, it also invites us to expand upon this. So maybe this is the core of what social work is. And your own understanding can be a development of this core set of ideas and values. So a global profession. Nonetheless, the theme of these two videos is comparative social work, looking at how it's different in different places. In my next video, we're going to be investigating this further, but I'd like to close this video by thinking about the different kinds of comparative studies that we could do. We're at the university. At the university, people analyze, they examine, they research. Okay, so how could we research comparative social work? How can authors or researchers compare social work across countries? You know, how can it be done? Again, pause here, scratch your head, try to think about as many different research projects as you can. What kind of research projects could you imagine doing here? Now, there's so many answers here, but I would like to highlight a small handful of approaches to researching social work comparatively. There tends to be different directions in which you can go. One approach, a number of books that I have on my bookshelf, look at social work as a whole profession and examine how it evolved differently in different places. Let me give an example. Some of you guys are Brits, perhaps, and you're thinking about how social work is understood in Great Britain. If you look at the history of British social work, it had a boom in particular periods. In the post-war years, we had children's departments. Okay, and in the early 1970s, these evolved into social services departments. So in a sense, from the 1970s onwards, the identity of social work was very much tied to the identity of that local authority, municipality, office. Okay, now that's going to be different in Germany. Germany didn't ever have an office just like that. So we're going to have a different idea of what social work is because of those different institutional understandings. So social work as a profession is different in Britain from in Germany. And again, later on, we're going to examine other reasons why it's different. So we can follow the path dependencies of social work as a profession in different places. And that's a fun thing to do. It's kind of like a macro approach, the big picture, if you like. Another thing we can do is to look at law. How are our social work laws different? For example, what about child welfare? Are there different legal frameworks for this in different countries? Now there are, and there's a range of publications which I'm going to talk about shortly. Child protection systems, international trends and orientations. This is by Gilbert and colleagues. And Gilbert's an interesting author here. He's fascinated in looking at the legislation and trying to pin down differences in child welfare legislation in different countries. A third approach, let's think about comparative social work education. What do student social workers learn to do? This is a wonderfully old approach to comparative studies. There's a famous study by Alice Salomon, I think it's from the 1930s, in which she looks at all the different countries' social work training programs, and she tries to establish commonalities and differences in those. So there you are, a study going back to the 1930s, almost a century old. Finally, a completely different approach, and this is more working on the micro level. How do social workers in different countries see and assess cases? So if we would have a particular family in front of us, how would we work differently with that family depending on our own nationality? Because if you're Swedish, you might ask different questions, see different things, understand problems differently from, say, your British colleague. So this is quite interesting, and by getting small groups of social workers from different countries, so you could have a group of social workers from one country analysing a case and compare it with what the social workers from a second country say about the same case. So we talk about this as vignette studies. So a lovely aspect of social work research, something that you can really do as an experiment yourself with groups of practitioners. Now, this is only a sampling of different approaches to researching social work comparatively. You know, this is a young field, quite an undeveloped field so far, but this is the kind of thing that you get in the literature. So there is slowly a body of comparative literature growing, and these are the kind of things that people do to try and compare social work in different places. I'm going to bring this particular video to a close, but it's continued by part 2, which you can find uploaded separately. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.